Scones sit at the center of nearly every British afternoon tea, and yet nobody has ever agreed on the correct way to build one. In Devon, the rule is cream spread on first, followed by jam. In Cornwall, jam always goes on before the cream, and each county treats its method as the only correct one, with neither side showing any interest in compromise. The scone itself is generally traced back to Scotland before it moved south and became a fixture of English tea culture by the 19th century. Cut one open, and the inside should look dense and slightly crumbly rather than smooth, which only happens if the dough is barely handled before it goes into the oven. Working the dough too much toughens it almost immediately. Scones remain a constant across afternoon tea menus in Britain, Australia, New Zealand, and North America today, showing up in both sweet versions with dried fruit and savory versions built around cheese. Shortbread technically began as neither a bread nor a biscuit. The earliest versions were made from surplus bread dough, dried out slowly in a cool oven until it hardened, long before butter became the defining ingredient it is today. Most accounts credit Scotland with shaping it into the form recognized now, sometime around the 1700s. The finished piece is pale gold, rectangular, and marked with a row of small pressed holes across the top, and it should break with a clean, dry snap rather than bending first. The high proportion of butter in the recipe means it bakes at a gentler temperature than most other biscuits, and that lower heat is exactly what produces the crumbly bite instead of a hard crunch. It remains one of Scotland's most consistent baked exports, sold in tins year-round, and served alongside tea as one of the simplest and most dependable pairings in British baking. The digestive biscuit picked up its name from an old belief that the baking soda in the recipe would aid digestion, a claim that was never actually backed by evidence. The name never went away regardless. Scotland is credited with developing the format in the mid-1800s, and it was later scaled up for mass production as demand grew. Each biscuit is round and flat with a slightly rough, matte top and a smoother underside. Fans of the chocolate-coated version follow an unofficial but widely shared rule, eating it chocolate side facing down so the coating hits the tongue before the biscuit does. It remains one of the top-selling biscuits in Britain today, and it turns up almost as often crushed into cheesecake bases and pie crusts as it does served whole next to a cup of tea.
The bourbon biscuit takes its name from a European royal dynasty, not from American whiskey, and it contains no alcohol whatsoever. England released it in the early 1900s as one of the first chocolate sandwich biscuits produced at scale. Two dark rectangular pieces have the word bourbon pressed into the top of each, with a thick layer of chocolate filling holding them together. The biscuit itself is made using cocoa rather than melted chocolate, which gives it a drier, slightly more bitter base, and that bitterness is what keeps the sweeter filling from becoming too much on its own. It has held a permanent spot on British supermarket shelves for over a century and consistently appears near the top whenever people rank biscuits alongside the custard cream. Victoria sponge was never actually invented by Queen Victoria, nor is there strong evidence she had any particular fondness for it. The name stuck simply because it was the style of cake commonly served at afternoon teas throughout her reign. England developed the recipe in the mid-1800s, a shift made possible once baking powder became widely available and gave home cooks a reliable way to achieve a light rise without advanced technique. Two flat golden sponge layers are held together with a visible stripe of jam and cream running all the way around the edge of each slice. The traditional benchmark for getting the recipe right is that the weight of the eggs used should match the weight of the butter, sugar, and flour exactly. It remains the standard against which British home baking is measured, showing up constantly at baking competitions and village fairs. Coffee and walnut cake has no single traceable origin story. It appears to have developed gradually across British home kitchens in the early 1900s, rather than coming from one specific bakery or recipe writer. Its popularity grew alongside instant coffee becoming a standard household staple. Walnut halves are pressed into swirled coffee buttercream, spread over a two-layer sponge, positioned so that every slice gets exactly one walnut sitting on top. Most recipes get their coffee flavor from strong instant coffee dissolved in a small amount of hot water rather than espresso, since that method makes the intensity easier to control precisely. It remains a standard offering at British bakeries and tea rooms, and one of the few cafe cakes where coffee is the featured flavor rather than a background note. Welsh cakes are never actually baked. They are cooked directly on a flat griddle or heavy pan, which puts them somewhere between a biscuit, a scone, and a pancake without matching any of the three exactly. The griddle method is generally understood to have developed in Wales as a practical solution in homes where a reliable oven was not always available. Each finished cake is a small, flat round marked with golden griddle lines on both sides and dusted generously with sugar, typically sold in stacks packs at Welsh market stalls. They are meant to be eaten warm straight off the griddle, and most Welsh bakers agree that reheating a cold one never fully brings back the original texture. They remain a recognized Welsh export today, sold at Cardiff Market, at food stalls nationwide, and increasingly in sealed packs at UK supermarkets.